and thank you for joining us for CBU's very first virtual last lecture. My name is Cayce Morrison. I'm a senior psychology major, and I'm the president of the Christian Brothers University Honors Program. As I imagine most of you are, I'm at my house, abiding by the shelter-in-place order established for Memphis and Shelby County. These are very uncertain and turbulent times that we are experiencing right now, so I hope that all of you are staying home as much as possible and taking care of yourselves so that when we are able to return to campus, everyone is happy, healthy, and really excited to reunite with the rest of the CBU community. Among the uncertainty and the challenges that we are facing right now, we want to do what we can to keep our CBU traditions alive. Several members of the CBU community have been working to make sure that the CBU Last Lecture is one of those traditions. As you may know, a last lecture is an event where a university asks one of its beloved professors to share with the entire campus community the insights that he or she has gleaned from years of teaching and living, as though it would be the individual's last opportunity to do so. This year's speaker is Dr. Cayce Lawrence, who will be retiring in May after what may be the most unusual semester of his entire career. We are confident that his talk will remind all of us of just what a special place CBU is to all of us. Since we cannot host this event in Spain Auditorium like we normally would, I hope that you have found a comfortable spot in your home to settle in and hear from Dr. Lawrence. We hope that you also enjoy seeing CBU faculty, staff, and students join this watch party and feel a little bit of the CBU community that I'm sure we are all missing a little bit right now. Here to introduce Dr. Lawrence is my friend Balan Kaladze, Vice President of the CBU Honors Program.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 13th Annual CBU Last Lecture. My name is Balan Kaladze, Vice President of the CBU Honors Program, and it is my honor to introduce this year's speaker, Dr. Cayce Lawrence. After graduating from St. Meinrad Seminary and School of Theology with a BA in Philosophy and Religious Studies, Memphis State University with an MBA in Marketing, and from the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville with a PhD in Management, Dr. Lawrence has taught at CBU as an Associate Professor of Management for 23 years. For over a decade, he has taught the course Introduction to Business and also the senior capstone course Strategic Management. These classes have given him the opportunity to witness some of his students' greatest transformation. Through it all, he has also inconspicuously contributed to his students' evolution. Even though he is an established professor at CBU, this is not what I know him for. This semester, I have the pleasure of taking Technology and Human Values alongside Dr. Lawrence. I have witnessed how he seamlessly transitions to being a student within the classroom. Just within that first week of discussion, he quickly established that students should just call him Cayce. This quickly bridged the gap between us and allowed us to see the ease with which he's able to have difficult conversations with us. Seeing him in class never felt unnatural, and we all appreciate his breadth of knowledge and expertise. As he transitions into retirement, he will continue to enjoy his hobbies of gardening and cycling in his newfound free time, but I know he will miss his time at CBU, whether as a professor, colleague, student, or even parent, for he has had 4 sons graduate from CBU. This chapter of his life is coming to an end, and he is on to his next one. I cannot be more excited to see where he goes. Dr. Lawrence is a kind, knowledgeable, friendly, and amazing person. From experience, I have seen how eager he is to learn from us, while also teaching us all that he knows. I am very honored and pleased to introduce to you today to present our 13th Annual CBU Last Lecture, Dr. Cayce Lawrence.
Thank you so much, Cayce and Balan. I can't begin to tell you how much fun I've had in the classes that I've shared with you. I know, Balan, we were just in the middle of one, and Cayce, I've had the chance to be in other classes with you. They were fun. You were a delight to have around, and I enjoyed what you had to share. And I appreciate you coming, how much all of you who are attending, how grateful I am that you have taken a little bit of your time out to come listen to me talk about my life and career at CBU. And so let's get started. Okay, I've sort of built this presentation around a set of quotes that I think, if they don't capture who I am as a person, they capture who I hope to be as a person and how I hope that I have lived my life, and some thoughts that have meant a great deal to me that I want to share with you. It's not necessarily that my thoughts should become your thoughts, but that you look for those things that resonate with who you are as a person and sort of sear them into yourselves. This first statement: as you go through life, you will see a great chasm. Jump. It is not as wide as you think. So if we think about where we are in our lives, seniors getting ready to launch themselves into the rest of life, those of us who are retiring, people who are at my stage in their career, who are leaping into a life of unknown, our whole society as we face whatever is on the other side of this pandemic, we're not going to be the same, and we don't know what that's going to look like. And it could be exciting, and it could be frightening, and it can be all of those things. But whatever it is that it's going to be, I hope that we jump in with both feet. So let's jump into this and tell you how I came to be who I am and the person that got asked to do this incredible, flattering, wonderful opportunity of speaking to you as a last lecture. Originally, this presentation was going to be given in March. March is a very important month in my life, and I didn't want to let that go, even though we're doing this in April. I didn't want to lose that theme because so many serious, life-changing, major events have occurred to me in the month of March. And the first was when I married my first wife, the mother of my sons. We're no longer married, but I am so grateful. So much of who my sons are is bound up in who their mother is and the sacrifices that she made and the work that she put in, taking care of them as they were young and taking them to the things that they did that built the character they took into adulthood with all of their activities. I am grateful that she's their mother and grateful for the influence that she's had in their life. I had a son. One of those sons was born in March, and Johnny's been an adventure. So those of you who know Johnny know that he is a source of incredible delight everywhere he goes, but he's a handful. But he's no more special than the other guys. He was born in March, so it's worth mentioning there. But in March of 2001, I had my first stent implant. I was overweight. I was in the process of getting ready to remarry. My stress level was high. Things at work were very difficult, and I was eating myself into a coma. And one day I just went lightheaded and ended up having to go to the hospital, and they put a bunch of tubes into one of my arteries. So unfortunately, that didn't stick. I didn't stay healthy. I didn't continue to pursue healthy lifestyles. I had to go through some more stuff, but it was still a momentous event. And then there's this. My plan was to do my classes a certain way, and I really loved my classes this semester. I think we were doing things that were really interesting to me. They were terrific, talented young people. I was enjoying my last go around with my colleagues, and like many of you who, especially the seniors, who missed that last taste of the few weeks that you would have had with each other from March to now, lost that with all of this. And I have the same grief, but I do understand the point of view because I'm in a similar launching place. I'm jumping, and I missed the last few minutes on this side of the chasm. Two huge events that transformed my life significantly. One happened just a few years ago. If you look at the picture of that guy with the long hair, and I had allowed myself to become grossly unhealthy. I was about 310 pounds, which is pretty large for a guy who's only 5'6". Could barely walk across the room. The guy to my right, that's my son Johnny, and this is the day of his rehearsal dinner at his wedding. It was a great day. The next day at the wedding, I remember sitting out front on the ledge, exhausted from trying to dance once. And I was looking at my grandson, and I realized that I was probably never going to see his wedding, that I was no chance that I would live to, I was 57 years old at the time, and if I made it to 80, it'd be a miracle. I would never see him married. I tried to make some lifestyle changes then. They were unsuccessful. it took until March, and in March of that year, I had a real heart attack, and that really got my attention. And I made some massive lifestyle changes, and even though I get off that path periodically, it still is the guiding star. I try to move back toward health, and I have a path that leads to health. And goals that I've achieved and some of the great accomplishments of my life were the direct result of that moment and that experience. But the most profound was in 1984. I was a religion teacher at a small high school, well, not a small high school, at a Catholic high school in Nashville, Father Ryan. Some of you might be Father Ryan alumni. Maybe some of my Father Ryan students are here. But I went off to Cumberland Heights Alcohol and Addiction Treatment Center in March of 1984. The good news is I haven't used since. It changed the way I understand what my responsibility is in life, and it launched me on a completely different trajectory. Um, Up to that point in time, I had lived a life of shoulds, what I was supposed to be, who I was supposed to be, uh, trying to fit into models and to fit in socially in ways that would make me part of whatever it is that I wanted to be a part of. And it didn't work for me. I didn't fit, and uh, one of the ways that I numbed that discomfort was with alcohol and other substances. And what I found out there was that I had to live differently. And what I want to share the rest of the way, every single thing that's happened to me from 1984 to now is grounded in that experience. Fortunately for me, my oldest son was 2.5 when I got sober, and none of my other children have ever seen me under the influence. None of you who are my students have ever seen me under the influence, and I'm grateful for that. Those of you who know me know that I'm not particularly good with rules. I don't follow scripts very well. I don't follow directions very well. Um, I do have a certain spontaneity, but most of that comes from an understanding I developed of myself after I got sober, where what I was supposed to be, I was supposed to be this religious person. Being a father was, I'm supposed to raise children to be a specific thing. Uh, that a husband is the provider for his children, and that the thing I needed to do was to find the best paying job that I could. And early in recovery, I kept trying to do those things, but I've adopted a point of view, and this phrase that I took from Joseph Campbell, I think captures that, and it's a really profound statement for me. And it reads, "On the dragon there are many scales. Every one of them says, 'Thou shalt.' Kill the dragon, thou shalt." And when my wife gave that to me, it was like I finally understood what it is that I want out of my own life. I want to live the life that is true for me, not the life that is right for my parents, or not the life that is right according to some institution. I needed to be true to the person in the mirror. And I most certainly have not accomplished that across the board, but I think I've done better than I otherwise would have done. Most of what I learned about how to reframe the way I see the world has been through books. I was a literature and philosophy major as an undergraduate, and I read a lot, and I still read a lot. Uh, I love fiction and nonfiction. As a child of the 60s, I was born in 1955 and grew up in Memphis in the 1960s, and as an East Memphis white boy with the attitudes about ethnicity and race and color and status and everything else that you would have expected from a guy raised by a conservative white East Memphis family in the 60s. So when Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968, I thought, he was shot because he was a radical, and the riots were done because of the terrible behavior of these people in inner cities, and that we needed to be afraid and all. And I had all this misconceptions about what was going on. When I got to high school, I got introduced to two books that completely flipped that attitude on its head. The first was To Kill a Mockingbird. If you have not read To Kill a Mockingbird, it is one of the most profound pieces of literature I think America's ever produced, especially in regards to relations uh, with people of different backgrounds, different cultures, and different skin tones, which we unfortunately call race. It is a tremendous book. The second was given to me by a man named John LaVecchia in my senior year of high school, and he gave me or assigned us to read. When I say gave me, he assigned us to read a book called the letter from the Birmingham jail, and the title of it is Why We Can't Wait. It was a letter that Martin Luther King wrote while he was in jail in Birmingham after a march. And when I read that, I walked into it with a certain set of racial attitudes and a certain set of social attitudes about the proper way for society to be structured. And when I read that, I completely changed the way I saw the world, and an understanding of what social justice is. And when we talk against racism, or race as a variable, his ideas, his vision for what human beings can be, completely transformed the way I see the world then, and it continues to transform the way I see the world now. I read it again and got the same goosebumps. I read it again recently, and I got the same goosebumps recently that I got 40 years ago, or God help me, it was 1972 when I read it. So you know how long ago that was. That was almost 50 years ago. When I got to college, I studied to be a Catholic priest. I was at a little place, as Bowen said, I was at St. Meinrad Archabbey and Seminary, a little Benedictine monastery, because I decided I wanted to be a priest. It was one of those shoulds in my life. I would be a good person if I studied to be a priest. And I'm not putting down the priesthood. I'm only putting down my perspective in going into it. I thought that was the right way to be a good person for me. I didn't fit. And one of the things that didn't fit with me was the strictures of Orthodox religion. I'm not particularly adept at that. I read 3 books by an author named Chaim Potok. If you're not familiar with him, he is a brilliant writer. The books, The Chosen, The Promise, and My Name is Asher Lev, present the perspective of Orthodox Jews living in the modern world, and their understanding of what God is reinvented or completely reframed the way I understand the God of my lived experience. Now, for good or ill, the consequence of that later on down the road was that my religious orientation moved from the religion of my birth to what I am today. It was the first step in the process of that move. The next step in the process in that move was a book called The Source, which I read between the time I graduated from college and my first year of graduate studies in theology. And that's a similar book about the experience of a people in Israel, and it takes you down an archaeological dig to bedrock and then tells the story of each artifact. Years later, I was involved I had 4 sons. It was before my 5th was born, and was pretty unhappy with life. I thought I was not a very good father. I wasn't a particularly good husband, and I wasn't a particularly good father, and I didn't really know what being a man was. You know, I was raised in the John Wayne era, where being a man was defined in terms of toughness and other things that I'm not sure have anything to do with what it means to be a man. And I got involved with a group of men in Fayetteville, Arkansas, who introduced me to the book Iron John by Robert Bly. And it's not a book about how to be a man. It's a book about what manhood is and the masculine spirit is, not whether or not I as a man have it uniquely and have it differently than anyone else. It's what the energy is. And so masculinity became an energy to me, and it was framed differently than the patriarchal macho man of my youth, into something that was deeply spiritual and profound, and were principles and values that, regardless of what my chromosome structure is, that I can seek and integrate into my life. I also learned similar things about the feminine, but Iron John really changed my attitude about that. And most importantly, it changed my attitude about what it means to be a father. And from the time I've read that book to this moment, I've always seen my number one responsibility in life to be a father. I wanted to be a good father before, but I wanted to be the correct father. I wanted to do things the way I was supposed to. And after I read that book, then I realized that the only way for me to be true to my masculinity and true to my fatherhood was to be the father that my sons needed, to help model fatherhood and a masculinity that is more open, more vulnerable, more willing to embrace that part of me that integrates feminine energy to discover who I am and explore that. It really made me a very different father. And from the time I read that book to now, I've been a much different father than I was before. I transformed as a father because of that book. You see the book, A Joseph Campbell Companion. Many of the quotes that you're going to see throughout this came from this book. And just from the introduction, there's just an incredible selection of profound quotes. And if you read the book, these selected writings and talks and different things that people, the editor collected, uh, the profound vision of Joseph Campbell is life changing, at least for me. The last book in this set is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And the last slide in my presentation comes from this book. And that book defined for me, it's sort of giving an overview of a life process, which I thought captured my own life journey. But is where I am in my life right now, the conclusion of that book toward the end is where it is the space I seek to occupy as a person in this world at this time of life. One of the things I discovered when I read To Kill a Mockingbird and Letter from the Birmingham Jail is that I have no clue what it means to be black in America. It's important to me to understand that I don't understand it and that I have to listen and learn from them and have to trust their judgment and perspective on that. Well, I think the same thing is true with women. I don't understand women. I'm not a woman. I've never lived the experience of being a woman in our society. My wife gave me the book, The Handmaid's Tale. And if you want to know, and again, it's a dark book. It's fiction. It isn't the way things are. But if I'm a woman in the world and I see the possibility of what the world could become, given a frame of mind that is predominant among too many men, then that's the world that could happen. I can see the fear of that embedded in the lived experience of women. And it altered the way that I view, again, not just how I view women, but my understanding that I don't understand. When I talk to my wife about this, their fear, her fear, and the fear of women who are like her is that very well could happen. Those are legitimate fears. I don't understand them because I've never and can't ever have stood in those shoes. The last two books came to me from a colleague who I'll talk about later, and they taught me who I want to be as a professional. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, if you've ever read it, there's a lot of stuff about calendars and keeping a calendar, and which is complete hieroglyphs to me. But the first part of it about the character attributes that contribute to effectiveness as a person resonated with me completely, and not in a positive way. Covey talked about integrity, and as I read through Covey's discussion of integrity, I realized how much I lacked it and how important it was for me to establish it. And again, part of that journey in the other book that was about discovering strengths and operating from strengths and trying to find ways to do what I do best, because that's, for better or worse, those are the gifts that I contribute to whatever it is that I'm doing, and I need to honor them. For me, integrity is being that person. I think that there are times when I can get inside a person's head and help them at least get a glimpse of different ways to view the world, and more importantly, how they view themselves as a person. I came to CBU in 1997. I got here in May and started to work actually right away on the 1st of June. They were able to find some things for me to do, and I actually got to start work. It was a great experience. And the rest of this story is that story about my time with CBU. Prior to that, I had worked for years with Holiday Inns in information technology, and I hated corporate life. I was, as you can imagine, those of you who know me, I was terrible at it. I didn't fit well. I didn't play the game well. None of those things just worked well with me. And I decided to become an academic. I went to the University of Arkansas. I got my PhD. Many things happened to me in Fayetteville, part of which consisted of those books that I shared with you, particularly Iron John. I got my PhD. I got my 5th son out of the deal. And I taught for a couple of years at a small town in Kansas. I wrote my dissertation and then came here. Shortly after I got here, my marriage collapsed. And when I originally got here, my goal was to write research papers and to get published and to get on a trajectory for administration and maybe one day become a dean, because I'm bright enough to do that. I mean, I'm not going to pull any punches about that. I'm bright enough to evolve, to get tenure, to be a full professor. I had all these ambitions when I got here. And so Joseph Campbell's words that we must be willing to get rid of the life we plan so as to live the life that is waiting for us. And while I haven't gotten all of my career right, many things that happened in my career happened because I didn't follow the path that I thought I was on when I first showed up. Actually, I've worn many hats at CBU. I have clearly the professor hat is one that they pay me to do to be here. They also pay me to be a colleague. I wasn't particularly good at that. I'll talk about that in a minute. Uh, I got to be a parent. 4 children. I have 4 children who graduated from this institution. They're not children anymore. They're grown men. Some of them are parents on their own. All of them are highly successful professionals. I added a child along the way, not by birth, but by step. When I remarried, I inherited a daughter. I'll talk about her later. And as I went through my career, I started taking courses, and I took courses from a variety of professors. I'll talk about some of them in a minute. But I got to sit on your side of the desk, those of you who are students, and experience what CBU has to offer uh, in a different way than I think a lot of my colleagues get to do that. It's one of the great privileges. So, as the professor, again, Joseph Campbell, what you do, what you have to do, you do with play. And I really believe that when you think about Tracy, who's the spearhead of all of this, uh, she plays. She is serious and she does great work and she's focused on her work, but she approaches her work with play, with joy, with happiness, with energy, and with positivity. And I wanted to be that. I'm not the same kind of positive energy that Tracy Burke is, and nobody should ever be confused between the two of us. Uh, the But what I have done is, as I go to class, when I walk into a classroom, I'm there to have a good time with the people in the room. I like them personally, and I want to laugh and have a good time. I want to challenge them. I want to push them. I want them to to go beyond their limits, but I want that to all be in the context of play. The biggest delight of my entire professional life has been my Business 103 class. To be the first professor of a young person on their very first day of college is a privilege not very many people get to enjoy. And those of us who have know exactly what I'm talking about. You walk into that room, and there they are, and that is the most optimistic, highly energized, positive, hopeful, anxious, determined moment that we ever get to experience. In that moment, there they are, starting life on their own. All of them have kind of left the cocoon and stepped into what's going to be their first attempt at adult life. And I think of my freshmen as grown men and women. They're rookies as grown men and women. They're not veterans. They don't know how to do it yet, but they're grown men and women. They can stand between me and a bullet. Then, as far as I'm concerned, that makes them an adult in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of whatever God they believe in. In between that time, I taught other classes, courses like statistics, courses in leadership, ethics, marketing, and or behavior. I taught graduate level courses early in my career, stopped that for a while for about something I'll talk about later. And then I get to be, for a lot of these kids, I had them their first day of college and I get to have them their last day of college. And many people come along, so not everybody that I have as seniors have I known since they were freshmen. But the vast majority of them I've had in multiple classes, and I've known since they were 18 years old. And the experience of seeing someone like Kel Nesbitt or Kelsey Adkins or Megan Sweeko. I think about Megan, she's one of my seniors this year, how shy she was as a freshman and barely able to make eye contact in the classroom, and the confident young woman she is today. That is just, I can't even begin to put into words what an experience that is, how enriching it is, and why I have the best job on campus. First day, last day of a person's college career, and to know the journey they've been on. I've watched them go on that journey throughout college, and I can't imagine a better way to spend a life. The term I use for that is I describe it as a drop in the bucket. I just want to share with you pictures of my last classes. They are a symbol of the types of classes that I've had. They were delightful this year. For the first time in many years, I taught an MBA class. If any of my MBA students are watching this, I hope you know how much fun I had being with you. Uh, I had not done it in a long time, but your character and intelligence were a gift to me, and I learned so much from you as professionals. And I was so honored at the way in which you took me seriously and participated in what I did, given that my approach to teaching may not have been uh, your usual experience. I have my sophomores, my stats students. Some of those were freshmen with me last year. And this is a difficult course for many people. And I'm not a particularly good stuff teacher. And those of you who have had me know, I'm not particularly good at teaching stuff. I make lots of mistakes. They get to see many of my shortcomings come across in the classroom. But I love them, and I try to be empathetic to their struggles with this and try to be helpful. And I take I make a contribution of a different point of view into that and try to help them believe in themselves. But this group really came a long way, and they're wonderful sports. My org behavior class, my favorite class to teach from a subject point of view. The reason I like organization so much is it immerses me in the people, processes, and organizations, which is what attracted me in the first place. I have to be honest. Sorry, colleagues. Sorry, Dean. Sorry, everybody else. I don't much give a damn about business. Especially, I know Dave Archer loves business almost as much as he loves life, but I don't. I'm a flaming liberal, and I don't love business in the sense of it being fascinating to me or any of that, but people are. And so I chose management as a career because I wanted to immerse myself in the people side of organizations. And I love people and ideas. And this organizational behavior class was one of the best I've ever had. They participated, they were open, they were honest, and they have really enriched my last year. My marketing research class is the most disappointing, not because of who they are, but because of what we were accomplishing. They had some ideas. This group came up with ideas that I think have the potential to have a profound impact on the way we deliver teaching at CBU. They helped me, or continuing to help me, understand how young people learn today. I'm 65 years old, and I've been doing this since 1991. And my mindset and the way I process the world aren't the same as them. The technology that I find to be such a terrible distraction is an integrated part of their lives. It's like telling them they can't have their arms. And so they have begun the process of helping me understand how that works. And together we were doing a project that was going to result in some recommendations and some research that I think have the potential to profoundly change the school. And last but not least, my seniors, this senior class. Sorry, guys who are listening to me who are alum, they actually gave the best set of presentations that I've ever received. Kel, I want to call out a couple of people especially. Kel Nesbitt, if you're listening, please know that I was impressed with you when you were 18, and I'm 1,000 times more impressed with you now that you're 22 and who you've become. And I know this has to be a grief for someone of your personality and energy, how grieving this has to be for you. For someone like Adam Dunn, who came from engineering, and I tried to crack him with, by giving him grief. I couldn't get if I teach with humor, and I try to get people to laugh. I never cracked him once. He was impervious to my methods, and my hat's off to you. I could never break him, and I tried. I tried really hard, but it never worked. And I watched other people grow. I watched people's self-confidence grow. But each individual in this class made a significant imprint on me. And to know that they were my last group of seniors to go through, I can't think of a better group to have gone through. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of who you are, and there's nothing standing between you and greatness in your lives. I love you all very much. Of all the roles that I've filled at CBU and all the different hats that I've worn, the one that I've worn the most poorly is that of colleague. I wish I could say with pride that I had been a great person to work with and that I was somebody who contributed across the university all the time that I was here. But the truth of the matter is that my personality and the defects that I bring weren't conducive to being a great colleague. I get my feelings hurt easily. When I do, I take my ball and I go home. I tended to isolate when things didn't go my way. If I got rejected, then I treated that rejection as permanent. If I had a clash with someone, then I tended to eliminate that person from my life. The result of that is not that, I'm not sure that anybody was harmed by that, but the contribution that I could have made to the university, I never made. There was a time when I was president of the faculty assembly. There was some serious conflict that came from that. And unfortunately for me, I stepped aside and never went back. That was not something that I'm terribly proud of. What I have to do about that, I can't undo any of that. I can't fix any of that. So what I need to do is, first of all, forgive myself for my human weakness. I'm a human being. Everybody has weaknesses. And I pray for forgiveness of self over that and to forgive others. And I practice forgiving others. I haven't always made it all the way, but that's something that I reach for every day. And the quote that I have, the key to serenity is forgiveness of self and others. That may not be a direct quote from Ebbett Fox, but I read it many years ago. In spite of that, I did build some positive relationships, and I want to highlight 4 of them. The first one is my treasured colleague, Reg Payton, who took me under his arm and into his confidence and into his profession outside of business and taught me how to be a consultant and taught me a lot about the business world, especially the minority business world. He brought me inside of that very challenging world of being a minority business owner in this community, and helped me understand the challenges that nonprofits face, that helped me build and establish an understanding of business from a practical point of view beyond my education and preparation. I loved Reg. He was a great colleague. He's one of the most loyal people you will ever meet, and it was a privilege to get to teach with him, and I miss him all the time. Second, and this is the person I've had the longest relationship with, is my good friend Kristen Preen, Dr. Preen, who has been my dean, who has been my department chair, and throughout that has always been my friend. And Kristen, I just want you to know on a personal level, if you see the picture of you that I found and chose, this is how I see you. And Kristen, like me, is going through some transition in her life. And I hope that those transitions on the other side of that, she has leapt. And I'm so proud of her for doing it. And that's how I see you on the other side of that. One of the mistakes that people make is that they don't take enough pictures of themselves and put them online. So you have to pick from what's available. This is one of my very closest friends, Jack Hargett. If you don't know, Jack is the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs, and he used to be my dean. What he also was the younger brother of a very close friend of mine growing up. His mother was my Cub Scout den mother. Jack was such a great, if Kristen was the person who saved the School of Business at a time that I'll talk about later, Jack was the person that reestablished our connections across the university, stabilized us in many ways, brought us into a much better, well-organized system, and he's been a bastion for the university across the board. I will miss going into his office and closing the door and talking in highly inappropriate ways. But if you look at I call that his serial killer face. He looks a little bit like somebody who probably belongs in a prison. But Jack, you need to get some pictures. And the last person that I want to bring up, who came recently to our school and who many of you love, especially students, I know my colleagues love him. He made the mistake of sending me a picture of himself in a bunny suit. And I threatened him with that picture. I just want you to know, I told him he shouldn't have done that he might see it again. But Dave, I love you, so I decided not to use it. This is the picture that's out front of the School of Business. If you got the email from Leah about captioning our pictures that were on the scrolling thing in front of the School of Business, that's his. I'm not going to show you mine. I want you to caption his because I think he looks like he's auditioning for Santa Claus. But Dave Archer, to be serious, if you think about the enormous experience that he brings into our school, if you think about the CEO experience and perspective, his connections with people outside of the school, his credibility in the business community have been such a contribution, and they're the least important things he brings to the table. What he really brings to the table is his energy, his love of young people, and his incredible character as a man. It's a privilege to get to know a person like that. He's become a leader very simply without pushing himself. It's sort of it's the only chair that fits his behind is the leadership chair, even if he doesn't have to be the boss. It has been the delight of one of the great delights of the last 2 or 3 years is to get to know you as a friend and colleague. And I'll miss giving you grief about your conservative ways in your your electric powered bicycle. Another relationship that I think bears mentoring, that bears mentioning is mentorship. I've had many mentors in my life, but the most important one I had at CBU wasn't necessarily someone who had been there longer than I had, because it wasn't. And it wasn't someone who was older than I am, because she isn't. It's someone who did what that quote says, and that's someone who helped me see the hope inside myself, helped me see who I needed to become as a professional if I was going to be authentic, who introduced me to the concept of authenticity as a professional and how to bring that out of myself. And so my mentor, Bev Vitale, who you'll see the little plaque in front of her, is the Lasallian Educator of the Year a couple of years ago. She brings a spirit and an energy and an enthusiasm to work, a commitment to a way of thinking that's not just about being positive in her own life and being positive in the life of her friends, but about being positive and uplifting and engaging and caring across the board as a way of living a life institutionally. She has brought innovation into our programs. She's a genius with curriculum. It has been a privilege to be influenced by her as a professional, and she is a treasured friend, and I will miss working with her terribly. So before bringing to a close my discussion on my career as a colleague and as a subordinate in the institution, I want to talk briefly about leadership. One of the things that Dr. Vitale contributed to me was the term servant leadership. I learned about servant leadership as part of the MAEL program that we used to have, Master of Arts in Executive Leadership. And it was such a privilege to learn in that environment, but I also learned and tried to integrate into my own life this concept of servant leadership. I want to share with you very briefly my experience with four genuine servant leaders. The first is Dr. Preen. Several years ago, many of you may know, she was called into service as Dean of the School of Business, co-dean with Sarah Pitts. They asked her, she stepped up, and she did a great job. She healed relationships internally in the schools. She stabilized our curriculum. We hit back to a place where we got back to a place where we could start to build a program because of her efforts and because of her partner Sarah's efforts. She was not treated well, as you see the quote that I have. I'm not going to read for it, but she certainly, the birds took good care of her during her time as a leader. She was not treated well at the end. She was not handled in a professional manner, and it was unfortunate. But what she did with that, and what makes her a true servant leader, is that after that experience, when she went back to her prior role as department chair, she didn't grouse. She didn't use it as an excuse to withdraw. She continued to lead as department chair, continued to make the kind of contributions that our school needed, the School of Business needed. And she showed the character of a person that, in spite of those challenges, which is what any leader does, she found a way to continue to contribute in a positive manner. And I've always admired her greatly for that. Second would be Jack. Jack Hargett also took the job as dean. It wasn't what he wanted to do with his life. He's an administrative type. He's a data analyst type. But he stepped in as the dean when he was called, and he took what Kristen and Sarah had done, and he took it an extra step farther and started to reestablish external relations. Jack is quite possibly the best networker I've ever worked with, I've ever seen. He brings what he has to every table he's invited to sit at. His credibility across campus is without par over the period of time that he's been here. But Jack never makes it about him. It's always about getting it right. And he's been of service to everyone he's encountered in all the time that he's been here. Dr. Paul Haught. Paul Haught is, again, a person who epitomizes servant leadership. He is the best administrator that I've had in all the time that I've been here. Anyone in an executive position, there's nobody close to what Paul is in terms of his combined competence, intelligence, experience, empathy, willingness to make difficult decisions, but finding a way to do those things in a loving and respectful manner. He is an extraordinary man, and it has been a privilege to work underneath his leadership. We have a new leader. I don't know what this leader is going to be like. I have not met Jack Shannon, but just very casually. I hope that he models himself on the third servant leader that I want to mention, and that's Dr. John Smorelli. John came in, and he really wasn't ready to be the president of the university. He made some mistakes early on, some mistakes that alienated some people internally. And he got loudly, let's just say the birds came after him. And what he did with that, instead of alienating those people, is he sought ways to grow and figure out how to not only heal those relationships, but to not make those mistakes again and not make those kinds of mistakes again, the kinds of mistakes that alienate people. And so he built bridges across campus, and he brought people into the circle of decision making and contribution that had never been part of the discussion before. He left admired and loved, and he put this institution on a footing that in my 20-something years here, nobody else had ever done before. I'm so grateful for Dr. Smorelli. I hope that the current president learns in the same way that John learned, and finds ways to build bridges across all the difficult relationships that you have to have in higher education. Nobody comes to the presidency of a university camera ready. It takes a minute to learn the culture, to learn the people, to learn to trust, and to establish new networks with people who have become comfortable living a certain way. And we needed to be challenged. But I do want to make special mention to the fourth servant leader that's on my list, and that is, in my experience, the best servant leader I have ever met. Joe Turek is the dean of the School of Business, and essentially something I didn't know until I found his picture online. A biker dude. Joe is such a great soul, and he approaches every single encounter that he has with respect for the other person, with openness to their ideas, with the determination to try to do what is right, with the courage to speak truth to power, but the character to represent the decisions of the team back down the line to other people as a member of the team and not as an adversary. Joe, it's just been a privilege in the last couple of years to be able to close out my career with you in that chair. In addition to my primary role as a faculty member and as a colleague, I've also had the privilege to be a parent and a student, and I want to talk briefly about those experiences. Those of us who are parents and those of you who will become parents, one of the things that you will hope for is that people will cross into the lives of your children who will make a difference with them. People, and that quick phrase from Joseph Campbell, our chief want in life is somebody who will make us do what we can. And my chief want in life was for my children to find people who would help them become who they could possibly be. And that happened for me. I've had 4 children graduate from CBU, and one of the gifts that John Smorelli gave us, by the way, was the phrase "enter to learn, leave to serve." I know that was a team-based decision that was developed across many people, but still, it was under his stewardship that we adopted that very simple, very powerful phrase. And my 4 sons who have graduated from here have all entered to learn and have all left to serve. My oldest son, Major Chuck Lawrence, who has a BS in psychology. My second son, Bobby Lawrence, who has a BS in biology, was the president of the SGA and had a pretty big day at graduation. My son, Johnny Lawrence, who got his BS in psychology. I had 2 psychology majors, so I have a very special place in my heart for the faculty in psychology. And Jacob, who has a bachelor's in history, Bachelor of Arts in history. All 4 of them came to this institution as rookie adults and left to live lives of service. Chuck, and as a soldier, Bobby as a soldier and as a doctor, Johnny, who brings that service into every day of his life in the hospitality business, and Jacob is a teacher. All of them have devoted their lives to a service. All of them are Lasallian, whether they intend to be or not, in the way in which they provide that service, which is very gratifying for me. I want to give special thanks to some of the faculty members who touched their lives. As a dad, it means a lot to me that these were the people that they talked about that survived the diminishing brain capacity that I have. They talked about more, but I remember these faces most, A, because my children talked about them, my sons talked about them most, and B, because they always ask about my sons whenever I see them. The psychology faculty, and there were many, but the 2 who linger, Tracy, the amazing Tracy Burke, and Conrad Brombacher, both of my sons, both Chuck and Johnny, specifically emphasized the contributions you made to their lives as professionals and as educated people. The sciences faculty, Melinda Fitzgerald, who has since retired, Mary Ogilvy, who looks so sweet in that picture. Doesn't she look angelic in that picture? But who kicked my son Bobby's behind all the way up and down the map and really challenged him to become the best he could be. Mary, he adored you, still adores you, even though he still growls at the B that you gave him. Anna Ross, who challenges her students tremendously, and she continues to teach biology even in retirement. If you're a biology major and you miss having any lectures or instruction in the field of biology, just friend her on Facebook and you can see all of the posts that she has. But the line that Bobby gave me about Anna was, He never really understood her contribution until he was taking hematology in medical school, and he was so far ahead of everybody else. And he specifically told me, Anna, to thank you for that. And I don't know that I ever did that, so now's as good a time as any. One person who touched across multiple lives of my sons was Alan Johnson, Brother Alan. And Brother Alan, if you're not going to get a picture of yourself, then I'm going to take what you have on Facebook, and you can be Black Eric Cartman. I love that picture. But Brother Alan, as a faculty advisor to the TEECs and as a teacher, literally touched the lives of all four of my sons who came through. I had one son who was an SAE and not a TEEC, but he encountered Johnny in the classroom and saw him at the pool and around the campus when my sons were all lifeguards. Brother Alan, you really made a difference in their lives. For Jacob, Sam Alpern, Sam, if you're listening, I want you to know that Jacob clung to you and he looked to you for mentorship and guidance on almost everything that he did. Neil Palmer, Dr. Palmer, taught him some of the most interesting courses that he took and always took a great interest in him as a person, and I was really appreciative of Neil. His advisor, and again, if you don't want people to use less than flattering pictures of you, Carl Live, also known as Lieutenant Worf, the Klingon. Those of us who have taken him for class know that Carl is a Star Trek fanatic. He's watched every episode of every Star Trek series that has ever been, probably seen them multiple times. So congratulations, Lieutenant Worf, on the role that you played in the lives of my sons and on your promotion to, I think eventually you become captain of your own starship. The final role that I fulfilled or got to play as a member of the CBU community was student. And I love this quote by Gandhi: live as if you were to die tomorrow, but learn as if you were to live forever. And I had the great opportunity, and I don't know how many of us take advantage of this. I think a couple of my colleagues have. I know Kristen has, of the brilliance that surrounds us at CBU. And I get to take these classes for free. So I get to sit in on history classes and data analysis classes and philosophy classes for free. But I do want to note particularly two who contributed the most to my education and to my understanding of the world. Neil, if you're listening, I have had so much fun in your classes. Neil may be the best teacher of writing that I've ever encountered. He has such a simple model of helping his students and empowering people who lack confidence in writing to become better writers. You made me a better writer. You reframed how I understand the world. Your ability to integrate literature into the classroom and into what you taught was phenomenal. But you treated me with fairness, and you were respectful of some of the things that I had to go through because of the fact that I actually am employed at CBU, and the classes were a luxury. And it was really fun. You are a true gift to the university, and congratulations or condolences on being the president of the faculty assembly during this time. God love you. And last on my faculty list, or next to last on my faculty list, the political science. Carl, I'm sorry, no pictures. You're going to be a Borg. And this is, for those of you who are not Star Trek fan, this is Captain Picard, Luke Picard, in his Borg role. So Carl, there you go. I took so many courses from Carl. And the best thing about the classes I took with Dr. Live was the first course I took was like in his second semester teaching at CBU. He was brand new and he lacked confidence, and he struggled to get people to participate, and he looked nervous and anxious. And then the last course I took with him, which was a second dip into the politics of science fiction, you know, the way he facilitates a class and the way he brings students out and gets them to comment and to participate in the unbelievable quality of the curriculum that he develops for his students in imagination, and grounding them in the fundamentals and in the history of certain ideas and how political ideas manifest themselves through different genres, not just the textbook genre, but also literature and science fiction and film. I had so much delight in your classes, and it was just fun to do. And I apologize for all the late papers. Every single paper I think I ever turned into the guy I turned in late, and somehow he continued to tolerate me. It was a privilege to have classes with both of you. Before I make some closing remarks, I want to begin with one saying that I have that I've shared with my students over time, and that is first, the first most useless piece of information in the world, and that is what I should have done. All that time up to this moment in time, what I should have done, the one thing I can't do about any of it is what I should have done because it's done. It's past. I can't do what I should have done. I can only do what's next, and I can learn from those experiences and bring that experience into what I do next. But I can't do what I should have done, so I'm not going to waste my time thinking about what I should have done. The second thing is who's to blame in any situation? Now, accountability, responsibility, different ballgame. But to say this is Joe's fault or this is that person's fault, it frees me from any responsibility to change. Now, as a general rule, those are rules that guide my life. But I want to bring in my last teacher that I wanted to mention, and the person who is to blame for everything you've had to put up with today, and that's the tweeter. Lee Johnson, Dr. J, you are a sunshine, a ray of sunshine in this university, watching the way in which you draw out students and help students to challenge themselves to think and to think out loud and to engage in respectful debate is phenomenal. The two greatest forms of praise, two greatest moments of praise or recognition that I've ever received in my life came recently. And one of them came from you with that tweet. I have never experienced anything that was as meaningful to me as that tweet. You know, we weren't going to do this. And because you gave that tweet, and I contacted Tracy, and Tracy contacted me, and she's the second person to blame for this because it was Tracy in the honors program who invited me to do this. And that's the second best praise I've ever received. Not number two. It is the second of the two best forms of praise or recognitions I've ever received. And that was being invited to do this. This is all on Tracy, the leadership of Tracy. If you look at her, the pictures that I've selected of her are always with people because it's impossible to imagine her not surrounded by the people that she loves. They all love her, but the energy is directed towards the way that she loves them. If you want to know how to live a life, all you have to do is hang around with her and watch her around campus, and that's how you live a life. Now, you may not do the same things that she does. We're all not all going to be college professors. We're all not all going to live the life of that. But if you get up every day and live your life with the kind of delight and the expression of love that Tracy Burke did, then you've had a pretty damn good life. And Tracy, I love you. I'm so sorry about graduation. I don't know what you're going to do. Melinda's gone, and I'm gone, and you may just end up in line anywhere. But you are a treasure. Final remarks, and that has to do with the rest of my life, my family. A great quote that I heard from Joseph Campbell: the distance of your love is the distance of your life. Whatever it is that your life reaches, love expresses that. I'm really going to make a difference to the extent that I love. And my love is rooted here. In 2001, I married the woman who stands behind me, and I've had the privilege of standing behind her. She is one of my 7 heroes. I have 7 heroes in my life, and she is one of them. And she is the foundation of everything that is good in my life. After I got sober, my life began to blossom. But happiness came when I found her and we started our life together. In 2001, we got married. And if you look at this picture of my sons and her daughter, these people were hurting at that time. I love them, but that was not an easy day for them. It was a wonderful day for me, but it was not an easy day for them. They had had their world come apart, and it was coming back together, and not necessarily the way that they wanted it to at the time. But because of the strength of character of the woman that I married and her effect on me that made me a 10,000 times better father than I had ever been before, today we have great relationships, and we're all close. All of us are close. I'm one of those lucky few who has a great relationship with 6 children and their whole families. I am blessed beyond words. And so it's left me with this: my legacy and my heroes. My son Chuck, Major Lawrence, and his wife Christine. Both of them are people whose lives are about something more than themselves. They enter to learn leave to serve dynamic permeates their lives. They're in Hawaii, so we don't like them as much as we used to, but otherwise we adore them. They just and they make us laugh, and they're both incredibly funny. My son Bobby, who is a contender for most intense human alive. He's a physician doing his residency in North Carolina. His wife Jessie, who stands beside him, is a family medicine doc with him in North Carolina. And if you look closely at the abdominal region on Jessie, she's carrying the future love of our lives, JT, James Thomas Lawrence, who could be with us next month. My youngest, Jacob, recently married the only person I've ever known who was good enough to be with him, and that is Katie. Those of you who know Jacob know what an extraordinarily decent person he is, and he married someone who has a chance to be at least as kind and loving and generous as he is. My son Johnny and his dynamic wife Ashley. You know, Ashley is the pillar of that household, and she is the anchor of what happens in that house. She is professional. She is accomplished as a professional. She is also a mother. Her relationship and what she has done for my son make me enormously grateful. Her strength of character to guide a ship through tremendous storms has taken my fun-loving, dynamic, playful, creative, witty, charming son and help him find stability and purpose and focus in his life. And I am very grateful for her. And Eliza Claire and JoJo, very special. Look at those beautiful girls. My two children that you have not met. This is my son David and his wife Cayce. So I have a daughter-in-law named Cayce Lawrence. Who would have thought it? David is a sergeant in the Army. So the son's on the top row. Chuck is a major in the Army. Bobby is a captain in the Army. And David is a sergeant in the Army. And he's been a drill sergeant. So Cayce has to be at home with two crazy boys, wild and crazy and unbelievably fun and lovable boys. And she has to manage them with a drill sergeant who comes home. She is the anchor. Her life is about that family and how much I admire her for that and how much she has contributed to the life of my son. Possibly the biggest gift my wife gave me, more so than the books and anything else, is she gave me a daughter. My wife's daughter, Ariel, my stepdaughter, my daughter. She's the only daughter I'm ever going to have. She is also a person whose life was about service. She was in fundraising for nonprofits, building community and helping find funds to heal the sick. She worked for the American Cancer Society. Her husband, Jacob, who is the stability of that family, he provides the anchor for the adventurousness of my daughter-in-law and their beautiful daughter, Molly. I love them all so much. So let me give you just a few thoughts before we go. First, we're at the beginning, not at the end of anything. Those of us who are graduating, those of us who are retiring, it's a beginning. And one of the things that's true, and I say this rather than the way that I say it, and I think about this the way that I think about it, because when I'm at the beginning, I'm not very good at anything. I've never been good at anything at the beginning. Nobody is good at what they do when they start. And so my graduates, you're not going to be good at being professionals when you first start. You're going to be at least not as good as you're going to be. I'm not going to be good at being retired. So far, I've shown that all I can do is open and close refrigerator doors and sit and watch Black Mirror films over and over again. We'll see how I do with everything else. But we're not good at it. And we get to be at the beginning. That's the only place that I can be. If I'm going to progress, if I'm going to move forward, if I'm going to ride a bicycle 100 miles, then I have to figure out a way to ride a bicycle 5 miles. I am here, and that's the way I not only need to accept it, I need to embrace it. Whatever else happens in your life, look to see if you've touched anybody. Don't look to see the people I haven't touched. When I try to orient myself, I look to see if there's anyone I touched. Every once in a while, something like the comment that I got from Lee, and I could hear, "Oh, we're so sorry you missed your talk. We're so sorry that these things happen." And I heard all of that, and I was regretful that it wasn't going to happen. But then Lee does that one thing, that one person, and I don't know what the hell I did that made her write that. I don't have any idea. All I did was take classes from her and have a blast. But she wrote that and So it was meaningful to me to think that I had had any touch on her. When I look at the students, when I get a student who takes me to the side and thanks me for something that I've shared, that's what life's all about. And it's just that one person, not the people that I missed, but the people that I touched. Joseph Campbell, through my wife, and especially through the love of my wife, taught me that the privilege of my lifetime is being who I am. I am fortunate to be who I am, and I'm lovable the way I am. But she taught me that I had to be okay with being who I was, and she honors me as a person. And I would wish that for you. And finally, just want to share with you that what a privilege it has been to have shared a life with the students at CBU, with my colleagues that I wish I had been closer to, with the people who graduated, with my beautiful students from this semester. I'm so grateful that I got to close up my career with you, and so sad that it finished earlier than it needed to. A final thought, and this came from Siddhartha, the last of the gifts of my wife. And this is where I want to leave, the parting thought I want to leave for all of you, especially those of you who are graduating. You're headed somewhere. There's a shore in your future. There are many shores in your future. But the reality of life is that I'm here and it's now. And so for this day, the raft is the shore. My destination, my purpose in life, the goal that I'm trying to achieve is to be the best person I can right now. The journey from here to the shore is what life is all about. And I'm still on the journey. I'm starting new stuff. I'm going to find another career when I'm done with this one. I want to thank you all for listening. I want to particularly thank the honors program for inviting me, and what a privilege it is to be asked by such an extraordinary group of people. Dale, thank you and your crew for all of your hard work. Tracy, I love you. Lee, God love you. People who listen to this and sit through the whole thing, it's her fault. Email her. And thank you for a great life.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, for your inspiring words. I know everyone watching appreciates your positivity and reflections on your CBU experience, as well as your willingness to present this year's CBU last lecture in such unusual circumstances. Your talk was a reminder of the wonderful community we all have at CBU. Thank you also to the CBU Center for Digital Instruction and the CBU Marketing and Communications, without whose assistance this unprecedented last lecture Facebook Live event would not have been possible. Finally, on behalf of my co-host Cayce Morrison and the CBU Honors Program, thank you to everyone who joined us today. We look forward to seeing you next year on campus.